eres suficiente.
Hello and welcome to Latina Love Diaries. I'm your host, Carolina, and today we have a very special guest with us, Laura Olvera. Laura is the founder of Señora Calzones, which is a business. She uses fashion to connect women to their sensuality, to confidence, and to the truth of their desires so that they can start to embody that truth. And she's also the creative force behind Primitiva movement, where she is using different tools to help women connect to the divine feminine. Laura, we're very, very happy to have you today. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me.
Very excited to hear your story and hear all about these businesses and how they've started and kind of you helped shape them and they shaped you, right? Because it usually kind of works out that way.
Yes, very much so.
So before we get into that, I just want to go a little bit over a getaway that I had, guys. I went away again with my mystery giant. I had our little getaway. It was incredible. I have these little getaways every month, and I'm telling you, they refresh my soul. We stayed at the Hyatt, and it was just such a wonderful hotel. Really incredible time. The pool, the bar setup, everything. And I just have such a really incredible time with this man. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about a little bit is the fact that it's taken all this time. I've been going on these trips for almost 3 years now, for 3 years now, actually, exactly 3 years. And it's taken me all this time to finally start to feel comfortable with my own sexuality, to feel that sensual side of myself again. That I'm buying lingerie. I went out and I bought lingerie for this outing. I bought some really cute pieces and I was very excited to try them on. And, for the past couple of years, I've had this body dysmorphia where I really still see myself as that larger weight that I was when I left my marriage. And it's been really hard for me to adjust when I see in the mirror and understand that what I see is not necessarily what's really there.
Mhm.
I'm still seeing a bigger version of myself for some reason. And I've learned to kind of ignore that and just still look at my body and appreciate it for what it's done for me. And I think that that's really helped me a lot where now I am feeling sexy again. I don't see myself as big as I used to see myself. Do I see myself perfectly beautiful and without flaws? No. But I am learning to embrace my flaws and to embrace the beauty of everything that I am. It didn't happen overnight, and I'm not a success with it yet, but little by little, it's happening. And I love how that's led to buying sexier outfits, to buying lingerie, to taking better care of my skin and my hair, and even the type of lipsticks that I wear, and doing my nails, and all of these different things that really come into play when you're talking about the sensuality of a woman and how we can feel good about ourselves. So,
Mhm.
it's the first time that I've started to feel like that. I've started buying lingerie. These trips have really helped to heal me, heal my broken heart a little bit each time by learning to be at peace with myself, by learning that there are still good people out there, by having these amazing, relaxing experiences, and healing my vision of myself, being able to feel sexy again after such a long time, because it really has been, I would say, years since I felt sexy, and now I feel that again. And because I feel that, I want to embody that, and that brings us to you, right? And your
Yes.
story and what you do. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about the origin of Señora Calzones, how you started it, why you picked that name, and really, what started everything?
Yeah, well, the name specifically came to me, at my father's funeral,
Oh,
actually, because, at after the funeral took place, there's usually gathering after, and they have food, and people talk, and they share stories, and during that sharing of stories, my tia I found out through an extended cousin that my tia abuela, when she first came to the US, one of the ways that she would make money was that she would purchase wholesale calzones in Mexico, like from the factories, and then she would come across the border with the calzones and she would sell them in downtown LA. And from that, she became known as Señora Calzones.
wow.
And I remember hearing that And at the time I had another business. I actually had a resort wear line called Agave Salt, and so I just remember hearing that story and hearing that name, and I was like, "Wow, I'm gonna pin that. I don't know when I'm gonna use it, but I'm gonna pin it." And then lo and behold, soon after that, we got into COVID, and, we had the whole COVID era, and everybody was kind of at home with themselves a lot, and including myself. I had my pregnancy during that time, and so I was kind of with my thoughts at home, just figuring out, okay, how am I going to pivot, because I'm about to have this baby and like what am I going to do? What's the next move? Am I going to try to keep this business going in spite of everything that we're all struggling with right now as small business owners, or do I switch to something else? And I gave birth to my baby. And after that, part of my postpartum journey was also during that time of COVID, so I still had a lot of time to self-reflect, and I paused my business at the time, and I was like, "What is going on? Like, I feel so disconnected from my body. I just don't feel like myself." And so I I got into postpartum depression. Like, I had a bit of postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, and, through my journey of self-discovery, of dance, of, taking dance workshops, of, therapy, I ended up pivoting my business to Señora Calzones because I realized through my journey how a lot of us, specifically Latinas, right? I can only speak to my experience, but I noticed in communicating with other Latinas who have been raised in very religious or Catholic background households that there was a lot of stigma attached to this idea of trying to be sexual after having baby. And for me, it wasn't so much that like those stigmas were being forced on me or that people around me were saying things. It was more the internal voice within me that was like, no, you shouldn't be doing this. Like, no, that was before, this is now. So not giving myself permission, um, subconsciously, to like allow myself to feel pleasure in a sexual way and to be a sexual being was no longer something that I thought was, like, okay, but I wanted it, but I didn't know how, and so through that journey of self-discovery, I was inspired to create Señora Calzones, to inspire other Latinas, but other women of color in general to know that it's okay to embrace that part of yourself, that actually there's a source of power within expressing and tou like, tuning into that part of yourself, no matter what age you're at, right? No matter what era you're in, whether it's your early 20s or your, um, newly motherhood or your, a señora, it doesn't matter what age demographic you're in, like that is still you. It's still a part of your soul and our soul never dies, like our soul never ages. And so, yeah, that was kind of where the inspiration for that came.
I love that. And I've seen some of your pieces. They're really beautiful, um, very bright colors. I love your use of color. Very, very Latin, I would say, which is something that I
Yes.
think is very common to you. You're a very vibrant, colorful people. And I think that comes through in your fashion pieces. I love some of the pieces. And you said something very interesting, how it is true that there is this stigma, again, not speaking for all Latinas, but from my experience as well, where it's like after you have children and now you're a señora, there are certain things that are, you shouldn't wear that anymore, or you shouldn't be doing that
Mhm,
anymore. And that is something
mhm,
that's very true and very common. And it does take a lot of introspection and being able to say, hey, you know what, those old values don't no longer apply here. I don't have to do these
mhm.
things anymore. This was another time. So I love that. I noticed that you have several women doing the modeling for your pieces, and I also love that you have such a wide range of different women because it is something
Yeah,
that is important to see. We've all seen the lingerie ads, for Victoria's Secret and everything else, where the women are perfectly made up and they look beautiful and they're a size zero. But realistically, most of us are not that size. And
mhm,
especially once you've hit motherhood and beyond, and you're an older woman in your 60s, 70s, and 80s, things can look very different. And so I love how
yeah.
you show this wide range of the beauty of what it is, the female body. Very, very interesting. I
Yeah,
love
yeah, I intentionally, plan the campaigns, like the photo shoots, for my brand with that in mind, making sure that there's as much diversity as possible. I try to include Afro Latin. I try to include, your traditional morenita. I try to include the light skin. I try to include all the shades, all the colors, all the body shapes as possible, as much diversity as possible. Because yeah, we're a rainbow of different shapes and colors and sizes, and it's so beautiful to see all of that, rather than this just one specific type of shape. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great for women to see and identify, with a character, with a person that they see wearing this lingerie, and then you can be like, oh well, I have a similar body type. That would look just as good on me, right? And whereas
Yeah.
if you see it on a super skinny model, you might think, oh, I could never wear that,
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, and I'm also intentional about, even the lifestyles of the models that I pick.
tell me more
I
about
would
that.
say one of yeah, like one of the I guess one of the more, I guess, controversial, like, posts that I ever posted on my page was actually a photo of a model who was a sex worker. And I have clients who are sex workers.
Yeah.
But I intentionally picked her for a runway, um, showing that I was doing at the time because there's a lot of stigma around that,
Hmm.
especially within our community. Um, and upholding that stigma just upholds the patriarchy, right? It upholds this idea that of Marianismo, of this idea that you have to be pure, like in order to do certain things. And that if you're not pure, then you can't feel that, or you can't be that. And so, yeah, I also take lifestyles into consideration too, because at the end of the day, we're all human beings, right?
Yeah.
And we all get to choose and have autonomy over our bodies and what and how we choose to express our bodies. And so, um, making sure that people realize that it's also about it is about body positivity, about the way that our vessel looks, but it's also about what we choose to do with our bodies too that is important to uphold.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And that kind of ties into something else that you said when we talked earlier, where you mentioned how, sexiness is not, it's not a weight. It's not a body type. It's really
Mhm.
an energy, right? It's a frequency. Tell me a little bit more on that, your feelings on that.
Yeah, I feel I think a lot of people, what I hear a lot, because I do boudoir shoots too. So I do the fashion also. That's how it started, was a fashion, but now it's kind of turned into a lifestyle brand, including experiences. And one of the first experiences that I test drove with was boudoir shoots. And one of the most common things that I would hear that I still do is, oh, well, I'm not ready for it, or I don't look the way that I want. Like, I'm waiting until I reach this weight, or I reach this, or I do this. And I feel that, like, we as women, right, we've been trained and conditioned to think that we have to be a certain weight or a certain look or a certain aesthetic before we can feel pretty, rather than actually tuning inward into, like you said, that feminine energy that's within all of us. Um, and harnessing that and loving on that part of ourselves and understanding that our bodies are just vessels, right? But it's really the spirit that is truly where the sexuality, the sexiness resides, right? And so we don't have to wait until we reach that perfect weight or that perfect look. We can actually feel good about ourselves now. And also hold hold grace and accept where we're at too right now, because eventually, right, we're all gonna age, we're all gonna sag, we're all gonna get to that place whether we like it or not.
Yeah,
So the
that's very
sooner we
true.
come to grips with that, the better, and the sooner that we can feel better about that and welcome it rather than fear it, I think the better.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that kind of ties into, your second business, which is the Primitiva movement. And, how you use that to connect women to that primal feminine energy. and to the spiritual tools they need to enlighten themselves and accomplish the things that they need to accomplish in life. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Primitiva movement also kind of came through my postpartum journey as well too. I just postponed its arrival for a bit because yeah, I already had enough going on in my life, but I used to always take ecstatic dance. For many years now, I used to partake in ecstatic dance, and ecstatic dance is a little different than other versions of dance in the sense that there's no steps, like, it's not like the salsa, it's not like, like all the other versions, it's not like ballroom dance. It's kind of a free form of dance, where you allow the music to inspire you to move your body how you like, and so, typically, traditional forms, like, there's a DJ, instructor at the front who plays the music, and there's no talking. You're not allowed to communicate, you communicate through your body. Um, and so I had taken that for a while, and then going into, um, COVID, again, during my postpartum journey, the studios weren't open anymore, and so I just kind of doing it in my house, to be quite honest. Once the baby and my husband were asleep, I would go into the living room, I would close my eyes, I would put a playlist on, put my headphones on, and just move, just to release whatever it was that I needed to in that moment. Um, and then I was inspired to bring it to life as something that I would share with others because I realized when I would go to these spaces, it was very, they would play a lot of the time they play, like, indigenous music or indigenous inspired music. Um, and the accessibility though, like, a lot of the people that would take these classes or that facilitate were not directly related or in tune with those cultures that they were playing in the music, and so it was predominantly white
Yeah.
people that would go to these spaces, and I would see, like, not so many people of color, people that looked like me, and I was like, "This doesn't make sense, like, why are they utilizing this?" Really, it's an ancient tool, right? Using somatics and dance to be able to move through whatever energy is stagnant in our bodies, whatever we're carrying. It's a movement medicine, and so how are they using these beats, this music, these concepts, and I don't see people of color here, like, it was like, "What? Like, this
Mhm.
doesn't make sense." And so through that, I was inspired to start making it more accessible to my communities, and I implemented a blindfold, so that's what makes my version of it a little bit different, is that I implement a blindfold, and the reason for that is because implementing the blindfold, one, it enhances the other senses. So taking away the sense of sight enhances the sense of hearing.
That's awesome. And I hope women out there can see that, you know what, you can have a dream. And as long as you have the passion to work on it and to go for it, I mean, it can really be whatever you want it to be. There is nobody that can stop you but yourself. And so I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It was great to have you on the show. And thank you, everyone, for listening. I'll be back again next week with another episode from New York City to the Pacific. I'll see you guys in the sun. Bye.